All right, welcome to The Talk, Debate Edition. This is our first episode of this weekly series, and I have with me today Jacob Stewart, esteemed junior at Laurel High School, and Ben Longbottom, esteemed senior at Laurel High School. Before I give us our topic of conversation today, Jacob, would you mind telling our audience a little bit about yourself?
Can you come back to me? My life is so extensive, I need some time to think.
All right. How about you, Ben? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
You know, I'm a big fan of Jolly Ranchers. Anything gummy candy. I'm about 6'4". My dog kind of took a crap on my lawn yesterday.
And that will do. Jacob, please.
I'm Jacob. I'm a student at Laurel High School, and I'm esteemed.
All right, gentlemen. I'd like to introduce to you now our topic of today's conversation. Now, after I give it, I'll allow each of you to have a second for opening comments. There will be a time for debate between each other, and then I will ask three more sub-questions to perhaps fuel the conversation a little bit. So the topic today is, which historical philosopher's theory do you believe would most identify with meme culture today?
You know, it's a very interesting question, and initially I have to say that it has to be something like Enlightenment period, right? Because really, memes have enlightened us to the inner workings of culture of mankind. Same with like John Locke,
John Locke.
Hobbes,
Yeah, I was thinking
right?
the same.
But as far as I have to say, the most prevalent as far as the inner workings of meme culture would have to be Mr. Benjamin Whorf, who formulated a hypothesis that says essentially reality around us is shaped by what we see and what we foster as a culture. And so, for example, Pepe the Frog is one that very succinctly captures the human psyche in a way that fosters what we do as human beings. And so I'd have to say that more often than anything, Whorf would agree with the culture that memes create.
All right. Jacob, opening comments about this topic today.
Yes, and then I'd like to ask Ben a question after I finish my opening statement.
Certainly.
I align a lot with Locke, and the Locke claims that people enter a society for a sense of safety. And I think that that's exactly what memes do. They guide you through your everyday life and give you this sense of safety psychologically. And as I said, any meme, Pepe the Frog, the psyche, everything Ben said is perfectly true, but I think a lot of it just aligns a lot more with Locke. And especially if you let me, as we get into this debate period, I'd really like to dig into Ben on that working hypothesis.
Sure.
All right, so before we get into that conversation, just to make it clear for the audience, Ben, you believe that Benjamin Whorf most aligns with meme culture?
Benjamin Whorf, W-H-O-R-F, if you want to look it up.
Sure.
Look it up on your own time. But basically, he formulates this linguist hypothesis. By nature, he was a firefighter and a linguist. So basically, a jack of all frickin' trades, and he's a G.
And Jacob, you believe it most commonly aligns with John Locke's
John Locke,
theories.
natural rights, safety, memes.
All right, certainly. So Jacob,
Okay.
so Jacob, you have one question you can pose to Ben before we get into our subcategories.
How do you solve for the discrediting of the Whorfian hypothesis and Benjamin Whorf in general?
You know, the thing about discrediting certain philosophers and psychological analysts and linguists, and I'm gonna bring in Mr. Sigmund Freud into this. Like, the fact that people discredited that is just to say that they're being salty about memes, right? Like, sometimes memes are a little bit savage, and people get a little butthurt over them, and that's why they discredit philosophers. The reason that Freud was discredited, the reason that Whorf was discredited, is because, like, the hanging Kermit, they got salty about it, and they're like, you know what? I'm gonna get mad at these philosophers, and that's why that
Freud
happened.
was discredited because he said something about loving your mother. So
Right. That's the here come that boy. Really, if you delve into the inner workings of Here Come Dat Boy, you can see that it's clearly the Oedipus complex. The green of the frog, the black of the bicycle clearly represent the fertility of your mother and the black of your penis.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, that got us absolutely nowhere. Mr. Longbottom, you have one question to pose to Mr. Stewart.
How long was John Locke's hair?
Dreads. Dreadlock and John Locke.
And so, how do you justify not dreading his philosophy?
Okay. Well,
Pranked. All right. Next question.
Stumped. So we have a clear conflict today between Worf and Locke.
but Locke was obviously a real person.
Worf
was
apparently. All right. So the first question then I'd like to pose underneath this for discussion today is: which meme would each of your respective philosophers most identify with today?
It's a tough question.
Jacob.
John Locke. Well, probably, if he had to pick a meme to describe his life or his personal beliefs, probably any Ron Swanson meme ever. Because how much more patriotic can you get than Ron Swanson himself? And John Locke was the Ron Swanson of the Enlightenment period.
Right.
And without Ron Swanson, without Parks and Rec, and without those memes, John Locke wouldn't have had anything to back himself up on or to base his beliefs off of.
But didn't John Locke die in like 1710?
You can't prove it. They never found his body.
All right. So Ron Swanson and John Locke apparently share some correlation today. Mr. Longbottom, which meme do you think most identifies with Benjamin Worf's philosophical thinkings?
You know, I'm torn between two right now. It's either the Arthur fist, right? Or it's the Here Come Dat Boy. And so I'm gonna justify both. First, the Arthur like fist, because right, sometimes you just get a little salty about people and you just can't hold it in anymore. And I mean, sometimes you're in class, right? Someone just says something asinine and you're a freaking pleb. But you can't say that because you'll get sent to the office and your mom will have to come pick you up and stuff like that. And you cry profusely. So sometimes you just need to make that fist, and Worf's yeah, because that's what the culture has created. But on the other hand, Here Come Dat Boy, he just busts through that wall, man, on his bike. What better
Meme.
No, just
I
stop.
think that's all the justification we need for that one.
It's the perfect capturement of the human experience.
All right.
And Worf says that culture is created by those pictures, by those things we say about them. And he's like, oh, here come that boy.
But
Oh,
again,
what up?
Worf probably wasn't a real person.
Why was he a real person?
John Locke definitely was.
You said they never found his body. How did they know he wasn't Jesus? He rose up into heaven.
No, John
Locke rose up into heaven. John Locke is Jesus.
All right.
John Locke wrote.
I love the productive discussion we're having, but this is why I have the questions to keep this moving forward.
Sure.
My next question then, which we'll have Jacob answer first, is: would their viewpoints conflict with any specific memes today?
Well, I think this can kind of be a joint conversation,
I
but
think it can.
because I feel like
Sure,
since we're
we
talking
can
about
make it
safety versus this culture fostered by ideals and pictures, so I would say most specifically they would probably disagree about Kermit the Frog, because Kermit the Frog is so edgy and edging on suicidal tendencies that Locke would say no, that's not a good thing because it counters safety, but then Worf would say, well, it's a good thing because that way we can look at the problem and foster a culture that counters that.
I think Locke himself would have really not enjoyed any Hillary Clinton meme at all, because Locke himself.
Worf hates Clinton.
We all hate Clinton.
We all hate Clinton.
Worf and Locke
Hillary
being
for
away
president.
from the establishment. That boy broke through that wall.
Right.
That
That wall.
Locke hates Hillary
Locke,
Clinton.
yeah, everybody
The
hates Clinton.
establishment.
So I think, would you agree with the Kermit analysis?
I
Safety versus this culture ideology?
I think I could concede to that point.
He concedes to that point.
All right, excellent. One final question as we wind down today for our first episode. Both of you are very well-educated gentlemen in
I'm erudite.
the fields
Look it
of
I'm erudite.
philosophy and knowledge, and of course your candor with us today. Do you believe that philosophy and meme generation will ever fuse into one category in
They
the
already
future?
have.
They also concede to that point.
Would you care to elaborate, Mr. Longbottom?
Yeah, so, the reason people get into romantic relationships is so that they can create children that then create memes. It's a cycle that even the best philosophers would say, yes, that's a good thing, because that's why that's like right Freud, sex and aggression, the only two things you make actions upon.
Loving your mother.
Like, yeah, the Oedipus or the
meme babies.
You make meme babies with your mom or your girlfriend to then make those children create more memes.
I think you completely misunderstand.
So yes, they already have views.
On that note, Mr. Stewart, could you care to elaborate?
I feel really uncomfortable with Benjamin's Freudian beliefs.
We're having a really comfortable grown-up conversation. If you can't handle it, maybe we need to find a new
okay.
Gentlemen, to
Okay,
avoid
okay.
losing our audience, I'd like to hear Mr. Stewart's closing remarks.
My closing remarks.
But she wasn't as
Move long and prosper. Not nothing.
The man, the myth, the meme, Jacob Stewart.
Not yet.
Mr. Longbottom, closing remarks.
You know, there all comes a time in our lives when we have to dye our skin orange and grow out a freaking toupee, run for president, and overcoming all odds, win. I think someday, even this scrub of a man named Jacob Stewart might even come to that point, because really,
Stewart
it is the
2044.
epitome of all that is the American dream.
Squirrel Killers is in.
All right, gentlemen. Well, thank you for your time today. We'll see you next week for another intriguing conversation.
Probably about Trump's.